Coming up, we'll explore progressive web apps, or PWAs, a new class of apps that deliver native platform experiences to enhance performance, resilience, installation, and engagement with apps. And we're going to also take a look at where to find PWAs, as well as one of the most recent additions, the brand new Office app. I'm joined today by Aaron Gustafson from the Edge PWA team. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So your team is really building the integration for PWA at Microsoft. I know there's a lot of people that are new to progressive web apps. Can we start by explaining what PWAs are and how they work?
Sure. So progressive web apps are an evolution of the experiences you can build on the web. They start with a great user experience and then are optimized for performance, resilience, installation, and ultimately better user engagement. These can be anything from a blog like mine, which is shown here, or an online magazine like you can see with Forbes, or a fully fledged app such as Twitter. Now, browser experiences have been a great option for writing once and publishing everywhere experiences, which is why this is such a powerful technology.
Right, but a lot of people might assume that the experience, if it's delivered via web app, will be a lesser experience than a fully installed kind of native Windows app.
Absolutely, but a lot of that's changed, especially over the last decade. For example, did you know your browser can actually tap into biometrics to let you log into a website using Windows Hello? That's the Web Authentication Spec, or WebAuthn. You can also integrate with OS-level payment systems. I love to point folks to what web can do today to get a sense of what's available in their browser right now. And all of that awesomeness is available to PWAs.
Right, and PWAs even take this to a further level because they can actually behave and look like a native app.
Naturally, they run in the browser, as you would expect, but they aren't stuck there. So you could install them from a store. So for instance, I have the Twitter app up right now in the Microsoft Store, and you can see that it appears alongside other apps within the store, right? Now, the Twitter app itself caches stuff offline, right? It appears alongside other apps, as we just saw, and it works like a native app too, with notifications and jump lists. And there's even this awesome thing. You can actually do sharing directly from your file manager into the Twitter app just using the share charm. And that's something you wouldn't traditionally be able to do via a website. And a lot of this PWA goodness, caching and offline push notifications and stuff, it's made possible by a technology called service workers, which debuted in the Windows Spring Creators Update, which was also known as Redstone 4.
Right, now you're talking about service worker here. How does that technology then improve performance and resilience compared to a typical web app?
So a service worker is an independent JavaScript worker that manages the interactions between the network, your app, and the local cache. Now, in a traditional web sense, without a service worker, the browser actually has to make requests to the server for absolutely every resource that it needs to get, right? Or it can check and see if the browser's already cached a particular resource. But the developer didn't have any control over this interaction. So because connections were limited, we tended to distribute our assets across a bunch of servers in a CDN, right? To make sure stuff arrived more quickly. But we were still dependent on that critical thing, the network, right? If we had no network, then all of a sudden our app was dead in the water. But with a service worker, you actually control all of the network requests and the cache completely. So for instance, you could pre-cache every resource that you have that's critical to rendering your site, your CSS, your JavaScript, images, that sort of stuff. And then when the browser goes to request those resources, you just reply from the cache and never touch the network at all. And the service worker basically acts like a middleman. And alternately, if you had some critical stuff that you needed to go to the network first, you could do that and then cache a stale version of it so that if you were offline later on, you get the stale version at least, which is better than nothing. Right?
Okay, so how do you decide then what the service worker is actually caching?
So every project is different and is going to have different needs. And that's part of the reason that the service worker makes use of very low-level APIs. There's the fetch API, which is used for network requests, and then there's the cache API that handles, well, cache access, right? So with these tools, you can pretty much build any sort of scenario that you want to. So you can even get really granular with it, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. But you can look at URLs and say, I only want to do this certain caching situation for particular directories. And then I want to do something else in this other directory. I want to go to the network first, or I want to go to the cache first, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
You can even get specific about the kind of files that you want to deal with. So I've got an example up here on my screen where it's actually checking to see if I'm making a request for a JPEG or a PNG file on my local server. And then if I test to see that the browser actually supports WebP, so that traditionally has been Chrome, though Firefox and Edge now support it as well, it could actually swap that request for the JPEG or the PNG and respond with the WebP version, which is kind of crazy and a little bit overkill probably for a lot of sites. But if you're trying to shave every little bit of bandwidth off that you can, WebPs are much smaller than JPEG and PNG files. And so that could be a kind of neat thing to do.
So all that really makes sense in terms of performance and resilience. But what I really wanted to show was a brand new member of the PWA family, the brand new Office app. Now, when we had Katie Kivett on the show a couple months back, she showed the updates to Office.com, and it's really using Fluent design principles and all brand new design. You can check out that show at the link below.
Right, and the underpinnings of the Office.com experience also leverage a service worker and provide additional code to build up that PWA-based experience.
Right, and here you can see that I've got the PWA app pinned to my taskbar. I've already opened that in this case, so let's go ahead and have a look at what that app does. So here I'm going to pull them both side by side, the PWA app on the right and the browser Office.com experience on the left. Now when I maximize the screen, you can see it's got all of the same kind of experiences that we saw in the browser before. So when I look at, for example, all the different app icons, I can launch here the rich local clients, Word in this case, right from the PWA Office app. In there you see I have launched Word. And now the nice thing is if I don't have Office installed, in this case I've actually installed Office in a way that doesn't have Excel locally installed. When I launch that and open up a blank workbook, it's going to go back to the web, and you see it here on the left side of the screen, open up Excel online. So regardless of if I've got the apps all installed local or not, it's going to be able to handle that situation. Now if I go back into the Office app, here you can see all of the different things beyond even just the apps that I have locally installed. I can even do things like pin not just the Office apps, but also third-party apps or line of business apps. So here I've got Box, Contoso Sales, and LinkedIn pinned here right into my apps experience. So let me go back into the home screen of this app. And now I'm going to actually show you some other things about the app. Because remember when Katie was on, it wasn't just about getting to your Office experiences, but also personalizing the experience like we see here with the Contoso logo and everything in the top nav bar, and also importantly getting back to your files and everything that really you need to work on as fast as possible. So here you can see all my recent documents. I can see things, for example, if I want to go into things that are shared or pinned for me, and even search. In this case, I can search for all the sites, people, files, and apps. If I type in that, remember that line of business app, the Contoso Sales one, it will even pull that up straight from the PWA experience. So pretty rich in terms of all the different things that I can do here. Now I want to do something crazy though and actually disconnect it from the internet. And to do that, I'm going to go into airplane mode. So now that I'm in airplane mode, you can tell I've got no internet connectivity. So I'm going to actually close the app. And I'm going to reopen the app. And now let's see what happens because I'm on a web app. And now when it reopens, you'll see that I still have all of my app icons. Of course, I can launch everything locally as you would expect. I've got all of my thumbnails. Everything was cached using the service worker. Everything is there ready for me to be able to use. And now here's something really cool that I like. Because I'm using OneDrive. I'm syncing to my local file system. I can even open a file that's stored in OneDrive for Business straight from the Office app. And it's able to resolve that link, open the document up in this case, even though I have no network connectivity on this machine. So in this case, I would install the Progressive Web App, by the way, from the Microsoft Store. But does PWA offer different installation options?
Yeah, so you can publish PWAs to stores like you would normal PC software or mobile platforms. And in this case, you can see that we have the Twitter app, you've got the Office app in the Microsoft Store, but you can also install directly from the browser, which is pretty awesome.
Right, but are there any limitations in terms of browser support?
So currently, browser-based installation is available on Android via Chrome and Firefox, Opera, and Samsung Internet. Chrome also supports desktop installation on Linux, Windows, and in beta on macOS as well. And the next version of Edge, which will be Chromium-based, will actually also support installation directly from the browser.
So in our case, the Office app, for example, it looks native, it can be pinned, we can launch desktop apps and files, but what are some of the other types of integration that we can do using PWA apps?
So I mentioned that there are a bunch of standards-based APIs, but PWAs installed from the store on Windows actually get supercharged with some of the same APIs that are available to UWP apps. So they can access things like local settings, connect to hardware, integrate pretty deeply with the OS. So let's take another look at the Twitter app.
Okay.
So they were an early adopter of PWAs, and they were actually our first major PWA to land in the Microsoft Store. So here you can see twitter.com using the kind of normal light gray and white theme, right?
And this is the local app open, right?
Yes, this is the local app open. So if I take that and I close it, and then I go into the system preferences and I switch my computer into dark mode, if I were then to open up the Twitter app again, and I'm going to go ahead and compose a new tweet, you'll see it launches the app and hey, now the app is actually in dark mode and it's got the matching styles. They call it night mode, but it picks up on the fact that Windows is in dark mode and automatically makes it match.
Very cool.
Yeah, so this is a great example of that. There was also the example I showed earlier with the share charm. And of course, PWAs can access other things like your microphone, your camera, Windows Hello, Microsoft Pay, the sorts of things that we've talked about. And as a developer, you can actually test to see what capabilities are available on each platform and then add those as enhancements to the overall experience. So you could have a normal login form, and then if you're able to use Windows Hello, you could upgrade the experience to allow somebody to log in via
All right,
Windows Hello.
so now that you've mentioned developers, I'm going to get you in trouble here. Why don't you show what a developer need to do to actually get all of this up and running and kind of how you'd build one of these?
Sure. So I am going to demo this in PWA Builder, which is a tool built by a colleague. But all of the steps that I'm going to walk through here could easily be done by hand in the IDE of your choice. So,
Okay.
But this is really just for simplicity. So I'm going to take the tech community website, which is available at techcommunity.microsoft.com, and I'm going to go to pwabuilder.com and drop that URL into the main form here and click Get Started. Now, the PWA Builder site is going to go and it's going to read information from the tech community site, and it's going to build kind of a scaffolded W3C manifest. So this is called a web app manifest.
Okay.
And you can kind of see that on the right-hand side there. There is, it's basically a JSON object with a bunch of keys. I'm going to make a couple of updates here. So I'm going to change this to being called tech community. And then I'm going to change the short name just to TechCom. And then I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, and I'm going to change the language to English, since that's the primary language of the site. And for display, there are a bunch of different display modes. So you can have full screen, you could have something standalone, which is what Twitter is. I'm going to choose minimal UI, which will give you basic browser controls, but not all of the browser Chrome.
Right.
So just back and
back
forward.
button and
yeah,
those kind of things,
exactly. And then I'm going to set a custom color as the background because I'm not a huge black fan. So I'm going to do a nice gray that I've become obsessed with. So next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a custom icon to this. So I can choose to upload an image. I've already got the Microsoft logo on here. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that from the file picker. I'll drop it in, and then the site will actually take that image and generate all of the different icon sizes that it needs for every platform that you would potentially want to deliver a PWA to, which is pretty cool. And you can see that has dropped it in here.
Yep.
And then we could either download the manifest at this point if we wanted to and just move on, or I can go to the next step and I'll be able to download the manifest later. So the next step is actually to choose what sort of service worker recipe I want to use for this. And there are a couple of options on the PWA Builder site that can kind of get you started. So the first one is just having a basic offline page, but you could also have a copy of every page that the user views. I'm going to actually choose an offline copy with a backup of the offline page as well. So any page you visit will actually be cached. But if it can't hit that page on the network, it will fall back, and it doesn't have it in the cache. It'll fall back to that offline page.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go ahead and hit next step again. And then what I get here is the final screen within PWA Builder. So it's just a 3-step process. And I can choose to download all of the web code that I just generated. So that's the web app manifest as well as the service worker files that I need to put onto my website. So I can go ahead and hit save on that. But beyond that, you also have the ability to choose to download a package that you can sideload into your Windows machine, which is pretty cool.
Now, just to be clear, though, you kind of want to do the web thing first and then load the Windows
Yeah,
app, right?
yeah. Ideally, if I had access to the tech community site, I would take the files that I've generated here and I'd go ahead and upload them to the server. But but I can just test out what it would look like if I was to deliver the tech community site as a PWA in the Microsoft Store.
All right, let's do it.
So yeah, I can go ahead and build the package, and PWA Builder will build up the AppX package that I need, or MSIX as the new format is going to be called. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. I've actually gone ahead. I've already got a copy of it here locally on the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and actually jump into PowerShell.
Because now you got to sideload the AppX package.
Yeah, you have to sideload the AppX package. The computer needs to be in developer mode to be able to do this, and there's some permissions things as well.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and traverse into the package. So this is the Windows 10 package in that PWA zip file. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this test install. It's going to prompt me, do you really want to run this? Yes, I want to run this. So I'll go ahead.
That's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to go through the process of doing that. Now it says app is installed. And so if I open up the start menu, you can see we have the tech community site right there. Launch it. We have our beautiful Microsoft logo in there. And hey, there's the tech community site right within.
Encapsulated, ready to go as a PWA app. And you can see there's an icon on the taskbar.
Yep.
So it is an app now.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, the Office app's going to replace My Office in the store, and it's launching today. So just search for Office. Now, if you're a developer, what's the best place to get started?
So the Microsoft developer documentation actually has some great information about how to build PWAs. And of course, there's the UWP documentation if you want to start using some of those WinRT APIs. Just make sure you switch the language preference to JavaScript.
That's right. And thanks for joining us today, Aaron. And by the way, if you haven't hit the subscribe to our channel button yet, do that right now. And also keep watching Microsoft Mechanics for the latest tech updates. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.